Mark stumbled backward, crashing into the dresser. The mirror rattled violently, as if something inside it was clawing to get out. The thing stopped. It tilted its head at him, a jerky, insect-like movement. Then it opened its mouth, or the dark hollow where its mouth should have been. A sound filled the room. Not a voice. Not exactly. More like hundreds of whispers overlapping, growing louder until Mark thought his skull would split. He clamped his hands over his ears, but the whispers weren't coming from outside. They were inside his head. "You should not have come." The words burned across his mind like hot iron. Mark cried out, collapsing to his knees. "What do you want from me?" The figure didn't answer. Instead, it pointed one long, skeletal finger toward the bed. The sheets moved. Mark's heart lurched. Something shifted beneath them, slow and deliberate, as though someone or something was lying there. He scrambled backward, pressing himself against the dresser. The sheets peeled away, sliding off the bed with a soft rustle. A body lay there. At least, it looked like a body. Pale, shriveled skin stretched tight across its bones. Its mouth hung open in a silent scream, but the worst part was the face. It was his. Mark stared at himself, dead, decayed, yet unmistakably him. His stomach twisted. No, that's not real." The whispers surged again, deafening. The figure in the mirror leaned closer, its faceless head inches from his. "You are already here." The corpse on the bed twitched. Its head turned slowly, the dry crack of bone echoing through the room. Clouded eyes locked onto him. And then it smiled. Mark bolted. He slammed into the door, kicking, pounding, screaming until his fists bled. The metal burned his skin, blistering at the touch. The whispers grew louder. The corpse dragged itself off the bed, its limbs stiff, joints cracking as it moved. The figure in the mirror laughed silently, its body shuddering with grotesque amusement. Mark's vision blurred with tears. He grabbed the lamp from the desk and hurled it at the mirror. The glass shattered. For a moment, silence. Then the shards on the floor began to shift, rearranging themselves. Dozens of tiny reflections stared back at him, dozens of faces. His face, all screaming. Mark staggered back, his chest heaving. He had to get out. There had to be a way. That's when he saw it. Another door. On the far wall, opposite the bed, a door he hadn't noticed before. It looked identical to the one he'd entered, except taller, narrower. The wood was darker, and faint scratches marred its surface. Something on the other side scratched back. Mark swallowed hard, his entire body trembling. He didn't want to open it. Every instinct told him not to. But the corpse was crawling closer now, dragging its ruined body across the carpet, its grin stretching impossibly wide. He had no choice. Mark grabbed the handle and yanked it open. Darkness. Not the absence of light, something thicker, heavier. The air beyond the doorway felt like liquid, pressing against his skin. Mark hesitated only a second before stepping through. The whispers cut off the moment he crossed the threshold. The door slammed behind him. At first, he thought he was still in the hotel. The hallway stretched ahead, lined with the same faded wallpaper and patterned carpet. But it was wrong. The walls leaned inward, as though the entire floor was collapsing in on itself. The carpet squelched beneath his shoes, damp and sticky. The air reeked of rot. Mark gagged, covering his mouth with his sleeve. He stumbled forward, desperate to find another elevator, another door, anything. The hallway twisted, literally twisted, the floor slanting sideways, the walls bending at impossible angles. Mark clutched his head, dizziness overwhelming him, and then he saw them. Doors, dozens of them lining the hall, each identical brass numbers gleaming faintly. 6.5, 6.5, 6.5. Every single door bore the same number. Mark's breath quickened. No, this isn't real. One of the doors opened. A pale hand reached out. Mark turned and ran. The hallway stretched endlessly. doors flying open as he passed. Faces peered out, faces that looked like his own, distorted, twisted in agony. Each one screamed soundlessly, their mouths gaping wider than humanly possible. Mark's legs burned, but he didn't stop. He couldn't stop. If he did, the hands would drag him inside. Finally, he saw it. An elevator. At the end of the hall, its brass doors gleamed faintly in the sickly light. Mark sprinted, slamming the button. The doors creaked open, and he threw himself inside. The panel inside was warped, the numbers scrambled. But one button stood out. Lobby. He smashed it. The doors closed. The elevator began to descend. Mark collapsed against the wall, gasping for breath. His whole body shook with adrenaline, his skin slick with sweat. He was out. He was the hotel room on floor 6. The wrong elevator. The Harper Hotel was the kind of place people forgot. It wasn't luxurious, not anymore. Its carpets were faded, its chandeliers yellowed with age, and its lobby smelled faintly of dust and lemon cleaner. But it was cheap, and for weary travelers passing through town, that was enough. Mark checked in just after midnight, exhausted from the 6-hour drive. The receptionist barely looked up as he slid a tarnished brass key across the counter. "Room 712, she said, her voice flat. "7th floor, elevators to your left." Mark nodded, mumbled a thanks, and trudged across the creaking tiles. The elevator doors groaned as they opened, revealing a dimly lit interior lined with scratched brass. He stepped inside, pressing the button for the 7th floor. The ride was slow, the machinery whining as though it might give out at any second. Mark leaned against the wall, yawning. The numbers above the door ticked upward. 3, 4, 5, 6. Then, something strange. Instead of jumping to 7, the elevator stopped. The numbers flickered. 6.5. Mark blinked. "What the hell?" The doors opened with a hiss. The hallway beyond was wrong. It looked similar to the others he'd passed, same peeling wallpaper, same patterned carpet, but something about it felt off. The air was thicker, the shadows darker. The overhead lights buzzed weakly, some flickering as though they might burn out. Mark frowned. There shouldn't have been a floor 6.5. He leaned back into the elevator, reaching for the button panel. But before he could press anything, the doors slammed shut. He jabbed the button frantically, but nothing happened. The panel was dead. The elevator was gone. Mark turned back to the hallway. At the far end, a brass number gleamed faintly on a door. Room 6.5. Curiosity gnawed at him. He told himself it was just some weird architectural quirk, maybe a maintenance floor, something the staff never bothered to fix. But the longer he stood there, the heavier the silence grew, until the only sound was his own pulse thudding in his ears. Before he realized it, he was walking down the hall. The carpet muffled his steps, though it felt strangely soft, almost like walking on damp earth. The wallpaper peeled in long strips, revealing something dark beneath, not plaster, but a black, tar-like surface that seemed to glisten. He reached the door. It was heavy, old-fashioned, with an iron handle. The brass numbers glinted in the dim light, 6.5. Mark hesitated. Every part of him said to turn around, to leave, but his hand moved on its own, gripping the handle. It turned with a low creak. The door swung open. The room inside was ordinary, at least at first glance. A queen-sized bed with white sheets, a dresser with a cracked mirror, a desk with a dusty lamp. The curtains were drawn tight, blocking out any view of the outside. Mark exhaled, half laughing. Jesus, just a room he stepped inside. The air was stale, carrying a faint metallic tang, like rust. He dropped his bag on the bed, rubbing his temples. Maybe the front desk had given him the wrong key. But then, he noticed something. The mirror on the dresser. It didn't reflect right. From where he stood, Mark should have seen himself, his rumpled shirt, his tired face. But the mirror was empty. No reflection. His breath caught. He moved closer, waving a hand in front of the glass. Nothing. The mirror reflected the room, the bed, the lamp, the curtains, but not him. A chill crawled down his spine. The lamp on the desk flickered on by itself. Mark spun, heart pounding. The bulb buzzed weakly, though he hadn't touched it. And then the curtains moved, just a twitch, as though something pressed against them from the other side. Mark took a step back. "Hello?" No answer. The fabric bulged again. Something was behind it. With shaking hands, he reached for the curtains and yanked them open. There was no window, just a wall, a solid black surface, pulsing faintly as though it were alive. Mark stumbled back, bile rising in his throat. The door behind him slammed shut. He ran to it, grabbing the handle, but it wouldn't budge. The metal was hot, too hot to touch for long. Panic surged. He pounded on the door. "Hey! Somebody! Open up!" The mirror across the room creaked. Mark froze. Slowly his eyes shifted toward it. And this time, there was a reflection. Not his. A figure stood in the glass, tall, thin, its face a void of darkness, its mouth stretching wider and wider as if it were laughing silently. Mark's scream stuck in his throat, and as the lights flickered, the figure began to step out of the mirror. The thing in the mirror. Mark's body refused to move. His instincts screamed at him to run, to fight, to do anything. But his limbs felt locked, frozen, as though the air itself had turned to ice around him. The figure stepped out of the mirror. Its form shimmered, not quite solid, its body bending unnaturally with each